This is Olufukeji Ejimi-Attebe. He is a chartered wealth manager, former institutional bank trader, and one of Africa's leading voices in financial market education. As the Chief Investment Officer of Value Flow Trading and founder of the Profitable Investor Network, he has equipped more than 20,000 traders and investors with practical strategies for building wealth through disciplined investing and market analysis. Renowned for simplifying complex financial concepts, Ejimi is passionate about helping individuals achieve lasting financial success through knowledge, strategy, and execution. At Beyond the Olodo webinar, he'll be challenging the way we think about competence and revealing why the true advantage of any nation lies in the capability of its people. This is one session you don't want to miss.
Thank you, everyone. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to confirm that you can hear me.
Loud and clear.
All right. I want to thank the leadership of the Mavericks for the privilege to speak. I want to specifically thank Sir Ajibola. Thank you so very much. I don't take it for granted. And this morning, I'm supposed to speak on the energy in the room is amazing. Even though it's virtual, it's amazing. Thank you, everyone. Good morning, everyone. I'm grateful to be here. So I'm supposed to just share my thoughts on the competence crisis that we experience in Nigeria and how we can solve it. So I'll just share my screen with you. I don't do very well with presentations. I just use them as some sort of guide. But I'll share my screen with you so you can see some of the thoughts that I have, and we can take it from there. So there's a concept that I learned. I heard my elder sister say it for the first time about 2 weeks ago, and it was amazing. As someone who is into finance, who is into funding, who is into infrastructure finance, who is also into financial markets trading, I'm always big on trade. I'm always big on commerce. I'm always big on national transformation, development, and industrialization via infrastructure. And so I'm always talking about trade corridors. And then there was a statement she made. She said, we need to build trust corridors. And I was like, what's that? And she was like, it's a phrase she coined. And it makes so much sense to me because we don't just need trade corridors to solve our crisis as a nation. We need trust corridors. So I'm just going to do a quick presentation that can serve as a framework for leaders on trade corridors and trust corridors as how Nigeria, I know it's supposed to be nations, but I'm starting with my own Jerusalem, which is Nigeria, can solve its competence crisis and build human capability. Okay. And the next thing is, so when I was younger, I used to think that Nigerians did not know the problem of Nigeria. I mean, why would you not have light for decades? Why would I grow up saying up NEPA and my children, well, they don't say up NEPA, thank God, because of solar and inverter. But all things being equal, they would have contributed to say up NEPA. And sometimes they say up NEPA depending on where we go. So I was like, what exactly is the problem of Nigeria? Why is Nigeria so complex? So the first thing is developing a roadmap for where we are going. We have to understand what Nigeria's problem is and state it in the simplest of terms. And then we now have to look at the approach we are using to solve the problems of Nigeria. And of course, there are two approaches: economic trade corridors as well as social trust corridors, because it's not enough to have trade going on. We must have a strategy that helps us to identify the gaps in social trust. So two corridors we're building at the same time. Then, of course, capability, how to unlock and engage human capability, and then merging the two corridors and putting it to work. And then I now like to look at China in practice. Of course, there are many nations we can look at if we really want to transform Nigeria. You can look at Poland, you can look at Vietnam, you can look at Singapore, you can look at Ireland, you can look at Brazil. These are nations that in the last 40 years have achieved levels of transformation, jumping from third world to second world. I don't like using that phrase, but you understand what I mean. And then you can see how their citizens were able to harness and arrive at the place of economic prosperity, grow their GDP. And then, of course, I like to look at China. Why do I like looking at China? Because China is unarguably the oldest civilization. I watched a video one time when they were talking about, there were some Chinese officials, British officials, and I think American officials, and they kept saying, China is a competitor, China is a competitor. And the Chinese representative said, with all due respect, China is not competing with anybody. I was like, what do you mean by that? You're competing. And he says that the Chinese dynasty, the Chinese lineage traces back 5,000 years ago. And he turns to the American guy and says that, can you beat your chest that, that America will be in existence 250 to 1,000 years from now? And the guy was quiet. And he said, there will still be China 1,000 years from now, because there has been China for the last 5,000 years. And I'm like, we need to really look at China. They really know what they're doing. So lessons to learn from a nation that has survived 5,000 years of evolution, 5,000 years of other empires falling apart, and they are still standing. And not just standing, they are arguably at the forefront of whatever is happening in the global economy. So that being said, let's look at the talent that Nigeria has. Why do we need to harness the competence of Nigeria? We have 200 million people. Now, out of the 200 million people, in about 20 to 30 years, that number can increase to as much as 450 million. Out of that 450 million, about 70 to 80% will be between the ages of 15 to 35. Digital natives, they do everything they do online. And so, if we do not create a competence culture and arrest the incompetence crisis we will have not less than 120 to 150 million people in their middle age not being productive. That is a national security challenge. That is a time bomb waiting to happen. If you look at the North, for those of you who grew up in the North, you will realize that the Almajiris of 1990, Almajiris of 2000, Almajiris of the last 10, 15 years are currently the bandits that are ravaging this nation. So when you fail to equip people with competence and capability, you are creating a national security problem for those who choose to be productive. I mean, we can call countries where currently you have challenges between productive people and unproductive people. Now, nobody is placing blame. We're saying that's the consequence. So Nigeria has the population. We must turn that population into talent. That's the first thing. It must be viewed as a national security challenge. If not, those who are productive will leave the country, not because they want to, but because they are surrounded by unproductive people who see them as targets. We have one of the youngest and most entrepreneurial population, and it is growing, the digital natives. Very important that we harness their potential. Number two, in Nigeria, we have a culture of succeeding alone. We are not communal in our mindset. We are not national and patriotic in our mindset. We are very individualistic. In fact, we have made it so that there's a phrase that says, I better pass my neighbor. We are individually competitive. We are not institutionally collaborative. And any nation that lacks institutions of collaboration will never prosper, because nobody will take ownership for anything. I remember the first time I went to Dubai, about a decade or so ago, and I saw I saw Emiratis hanging the flags of their country over their buildings. Like when in my house now, I built my house and then I choose to put the flag of Nigeria on my building. That is how nationalistic and patriotic they are. I don't think anybody will even to put the photos of our leaders in our offices. Some people outrightly say, for what? What has it done for me? Or a map of your nation. So we have to find a way to help people understand that it's not about being a brilliant individual succeeding alone. You have to compound your success by turning personal success into national results. And then, of course, you also have the issue of all these lapses turning into a competence crisis. We have a brain drain. We have a mismatch of skills. We have low trust between citizens, state, and business, especially in the younger generation. Case in point, NSAS. Case in point, police brutality. Case in point, young people not even being interested in conversations around politics, except in the last election where there was serious youth engagement, but that was also truncated again by an individualistic approach, by an ethnic approach, by a religious approach. And so we don't see ourselves as being united along national lines. Everybody is individualistic, everybody is ethnic. I hope this is making sense so far. I want to be sure that I'm not speaking to myself or delivering a,
We're with you,
a
sir. We're
Right
with
on,
you.
sir.
monologue.
We are
Did I
with you,
see?
sir.
Okay,
We are with you, sir.
fantastic.
Yeah,
Okay,
with you, sir.
fantastic. Thank you very much. So, two
In
things we
the
must
local
look at building.
language, you make brain.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So, every nation needs two kinds of roads. You need an economic trade corridor, a pathway that moves goods, money, people, services, products, right, from one location to another within the nation and to exit points outside the nation. Let me say something categorical. One of the reasons why I like Alhaji Dangote, regardless of what you may say about him, is because he's doing what the government of this nation was supposed to do. Anytime you discuss economic trade, you have to look at energy. He has solved the energy crisis in Nigeria by finally giving us a functional refinery. And right now, Nigeria is the largest exporter of aviation fuel, supplying Europe and America, thanks to the Strait of Hormuz crisis between Iran and America. Now, I need you to understand the implication of that. For every plane to fly in America and Europe, they use crude oil coming from a Nigerian refinery. I think that man should be celebrated. Whether you call him a monopolist or what he's doing is what the Nigerian government failed to do. And so we have to individualistically ask ourselves as people, what will I produce that will go around Nigeria and beyond Nigeria in terms of information, intellect, in terms of goods, physical goods and commerce, in terms of services? Everybody should have an economic trade approach, a pathway that moves their goods, their money, their people from one location to another. Resolving the issue of energy, Dangote is currently resolving the issue of logistics. He's opening up seaports. Immediately after those seaports are opened up, next thing we're seeing is rails, because railway lines move those goods across the nation and even beyond. So every person must ask himself over a 10-year period, over a 30-year period, how am I going to take whatever intellectual property, whatever physical goods, physical service that I'm rendering, and how am I going to take it across the nation and beyond the nation? This is extremely important. Number two is our social trust corridor. We must, over time, be building social capital between ourselves, our business partners, our consumers, our customers, and even those abroad. When I see people say certain things as simple as the way you comment on your Instagram page, your corporate Instagram page, the kind of capital you are building. There are people who say, I'm just like that. Please, 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 please. You're not building social trust. You're not building social capital. Everybody has to know per time the measure of social trust they are building. And that, of course, will take me into things like personal branding, things like branding and favor, because social trust in simple terms is simply favor. The art and science of being liked, known, trusted, preferred, and referred. KLTPR, the art and science of being known, liked, trusted, preferred, and referred. That's social trust. That's in itself the consequence of branding. So I ask people all the time, if we're going to solve the competence crisis, how are you presenting your brand to the marketplace? Sometimes it is a personal brand. So, for example, a Tony Elumelu, sorry to call names, can get a town hall filled with young people today because he has built a personal brand. From his red socks to his tease and composure, showing you how he's working out, showing you how he's chopping life. It's a personal brand. That's not something that necessarily a Jim Ovia can do. I'm sorry for calling names. If a Jim Ovia wants to fill a hall today with young people, he probably will pay for adverts. If a Tony Elumelu wants to fill a hall with young people, he'll just do 2 or 3 tweets. And so as a business owner, you ask yourself, what am I doing to put my personal brand out there? And you do not need to have a personal brand. So if you don't want a personal brand, you're the quiet type, you are introverted, or you want to keep your business life separate from your personal life, then you must have a solid product brand. Nobody may know of Jimovio, you may not even know what he looks like, but everybody knows Zenith Bank. Nobody may know of Jimovia, but everybody knows Civic Center and everybody knows the Civic Towers. So what I'm saying is there must be an attempt to be known for something, to be liked for something, to be trusted for something. I'm a person of faith and I use scripture all the time. Jesus said, "Who do men say that I am?" You cannot allow the third party narrative to be coincidental. Every day you must show up and you must be building a narrative about yourself. And this is why the people who fight against people like Epella or people who fight against people like Bob Risky, you're not getting the point. They are actually doing something right, albeit they are doing it in channels that are arguable because they are showing up every day with a consistency of thought and actions that lets you know what to expect from them. I always say this, if I'm to call you today without using your government name, what can I say about you that people will know that this is the person they're talking about? Jesus said, "Who do men say that I am?" And the disciples answered, they say, some say you are Elijah, some say you are the prophet. And it's like, okay, that's close. We're in the same industry, we're in the same niche. So you may not be exactly known, but then to his inner circle, he called them and said, "Who do you say that I am?" So every day I wake up, I'm like, what narrative am I spreading to my inner circle? They must know me with clarity and consistency. What narrative am I sending to my external circle? What narrative am I sending to the larger mass community? It cannot be left to chance. I remember when I woke up one day and I said, I must be known as Africa's #1 financial markets coach. That was a season in my life. Right now, I'm getting known as Africa's #1 infrastructure funding and connectivity consultant because that is a layer for national development. If we do not sort out our infrastructure in this nation, we will not grow beyond a particular level. I don't know if this is helping anybody. I'd like to see in the comments that someone is understanding this and someone is making a commitment to building their brand. Either it's a personal brand or it's a product brand where people know what you are producing, or it's a corporate brand where people know the company responsible for different products that you put out. So social trust corridor. I think I can go on. So for economic trade corridors, if we're speaking to policymakers, if we're speaking to entrepreneurs in this place, then you have to look at things like physical links, you have to look at things like market access, you have to look at things like flow of capital, flow of ideas. We can go on and on. Social trust has to do with, sorry, give me 1 second. Social trust has to do with shared standards. We need to develop a way to standardize what we do. I call it global benchmarking. It's not enough to produce, you must produce as if you are producing for the world's greatest professional bodies and ensure that your quality standards to a large extent are consistent. We need to understand and ensure fair enforcement, the rule of law. We need to make certain that when people say something will happen, it's going to happen. And we need to create systems for ensuring justice. To show you how social trust is badly impaired in this nation, things happen to people and you hear them say things like, call the police, or they say, please, you have access to VDN. That's somebody who stood up and said, I'm going to build social trust. We need to learn how to hold people accountable. And I say this every time, it must happen across leadership, political leadership, religious leadership. People who hold people to accountability and fair enforcement should not be seen as the enemy. And I'm going to drop this now because the younger generation, I like what they're doing. They're holding everybody accountable. You may look at it and say they're doing it in a way that is abrasive, in a way that is harsh, but at least they're doing it. They can stand before leadership and call out leaders. Now, I'm not an advocate of dishonor, but a person that can look and say something like Sorosoke Were. Now, that is harsh, but that's because there has been decades of zero accountability. So how do we enforce fairness? How do we resolve disputes? Because I don't have time, we can just move on to other concepts: trade without trust, trust without trade. Like I said, I don't do very well with slides. But let me talk about some capability engine features. For everybody here, right? there must be a framework by which you develop the 3 C's: competence, character, and connections. Competence is the art and science of identifying and solving problems faster, better, and cheaper. The art and science of identifying and solving problems faster, better, and cheaper in a way and manner that creates value for yourself as the problem solver and for the person whose problems are being solved. What can you do? Who are you? Who do you know? Competence speaks to what you can do. I always tell people that if we're ever going to build a nation that works, people must be taught competence along 3 lines. The first competence is problem-solving competence, technical competence. I always say this: if someone is a vulcanizer, he may not become wealthy, but he will never lack what to eat. As long as there are cars, there are tires, and people have tire puncture problems, vulcanizers will always have cash flow. What problem can you solve? How complex is that problem? How irreplaceable are you and the organization you have created? What problems can you solve? Technical skill, problem-solving skill. You can't say you are competent if you cannot solve specific problems for specific people. I solve the problem of thought leadership. I solve the problem of inspiration. I solve the problem of clarity, of purpose, clarity of pursuit, clarity of prosperity, how to become wealthy. I solve that problem. So everybody here must solve it on a personal level and solve it on a corporate level. What problem do I solve for my employer? No matter how they downsize in a company, the gateman will always have his job. It may look funny, but his job is extremely simple: access control. So if you cannot clearly state the problem you are solving within your organization, who you are solving it for. Some people rise faster because they solve problems for the CEO. They solve problems for the head of HR. They may even be solving problems that they were not assigned to solve, and that's the reason why they're still in those organizations. Competence is about problem solving. You must have problem solving competence. You must have persuasion and communication competence. Persuasion and communication competence. You must every day develop the capacity to use your words to influence change, to compel people to take action. Every day, these are skill sets I'm building in my kids. These are skill sets I'm building in my team. When you open your mouth, do people take action? When you type, when you write, when you put out your thought leadership, do people take action? You must have persuasion competence. And persuasion competence is not phone, it's not accent. It's not, you can be speaking only your native language and you are persuading people every day. I hope this is helping somebody. Then the third is scaling and expansion competence. The capacity to take something at 10 naira and produce 5 naira in profits. If they up it to 1,000, you can produce 500. If they up it to 1 billion, you can produce 500 million. Most people do not develop scaling and expansion competence. You have to ask yourself, oh, this business I am in, if you give me a 500 million capital infusion, can I still make it work? If you give me a 5 billion capital infusion, can I still make it work? If you make it 50 billion or 500 billion, can I still make it work? Because there's something you call the money flow, the economies of individuals, household, organizations, governments. You have to learn how to scale and provide the same quality of service across these different levels on the value chain, on the money chain. I hope this is making sense. So competence, if this is all I'm able to discuss, the art and science of competence, of course, we can go into character, we can go into connections, but I'm just focusing on competence because this is a competence challenge. When people think of competence, they need to know the areas they are building competence. You are building competence in these different areas: problem solving, technical competence, persuasion and communication for influence competence, and then scaling and expansion, systemization competence is so important. Then, of course, we look at character. It's not enough to have competence, you must have character, integrity, consistency. Then, of course, we look at the art and science of connections. Sometimes it's not what you do, it is who you do it for that matters. I always say this, that there's a picture I see online now. There's an updated version of the picture. They updated it for us about a month ago. The billionaires, Rabiu, see how I'm saying them as if I know them personally, but you get Dangote or Tedola. They were on a yacht in Qatar, I think, in the UAE. I don't know where exactly. And I used to ask myself that the barbers of these men, it's very likely that some of them fly out their barbers, some of them fly out their masseurs, some of them fly out their chefs, some of them fly out their fitness coach. So it's not what you do, it's who you do it for. And that's the art and science of connections, advantageous connections, quality connections, where you can offer value and also receive value. I always say that for relationships to be sustained, resources must be exchanged. For relationships to be sustained, resources must be exchanged. So these are the three C's: competence, character, connections. Then, of course, exposure, execution, and evaluation. Then inspiration, implementation, and iteration. Then mentorship, modeling, and measuring, mass measuring. All right. Time will fail me to delve more into some of this, but let's just run it through. I've spoken on competence, I've spoken on character, I've spoken of connections. Every capable person needs this. Then, of course, how competence is built through exposure. Sometimes travel, sometimes attend trade shows, sometimes take your staff and get them exposed, exposure. Then, of course, execution. Some people do not like doing the real work under real pressure, right? And then evaluation, feedback. Some of us, the reason why our competence has not moved to the next level is we hate evaluation. We take feedback as personal attacks. We do not know how to objectively, dispassionately receive feedback. It shows in our love relationships. The way we receive feedback from our spouse, we're triggered, we're defensive. It shows in our corporate relationships. Some of us can only receive feedback from superiors. We don't know how to receive feedback from colleagues and from subordinates. You must develop a system for feedback. Someone I respect in my industry, Ray Dalio of Bridgewater Associates, the largest asset manager in the world and hedge fund manager in the world. He has a system in his organization where it is the responsibility of two people to always be devil's advocate and share an opposite opinion. If everybody on the leadership team agrees, they don't finish that meeting until two divergent opinions are given, because you cannot know and see everything. You will always have a blind spot. So you must create systems for evaluation. I don't know if this is helping anyone. Of course, then how ideas become results. It starts from inspiration. I'll wrap this up by saying the squad you must build. Inspiration, inspiration. As a person of faith, I say there's a spirit in man, and the inspiration of the Almighty makes him of quick understanding. Inspiration is the bedrock of all competence and national transformation. Ovil and Wilbur Wright, they woke up one day and said, come, we want to fly. Ridiculous at their time and industry today. This is why I like spending time around children. I like spending time around people who are dreamers. This is why some musicians take things to inspire them. I'm not against it, I'm not for it, but we need inspiration. For people of faith, they say, do not be drunk with wine, which is in excess, but be filled with the Holy Ghost. He's talking about inspiration. Why am I saying this? Because some of us do not have systems for inspiration again. We're just going through the routine of life. And I don't blame anyone. I don't blame myself. I don't blame anyone, because sometimes you just keep doing the same thing. Who is going to jerk you out of routine and inspire you? Sometimes you go on YouTube and just watch stuff to be inspired. I always say this: everybody should have models they look up to. You must have your your local model, someone in your immediate community that you have access to that is doing big stuff. You must have your national model, someone at a national level that is doing big stuff. You must have your continental reference, someone who is the biggest person in your continent. You must have your global reference, someone who is doing the biggest things in America, in China. You must have these 4 to 5 different people whose social media platforms you touch base with, whose email list you are on, whose YouTube you watch from time to time. You must be inspired. I know that life is lifing, but you must find a way to inspire yourself. And then, of course, to implement. You turn your ideas into a plan, into budget, into delivery. Then you iterate every time, pivoting, pivoting. The way this world is going, you can be literally doing something and your competitor is in another field. For example, the automobile industry. BYD was a battery manufacturer and still is a battery manufacturer. I'm pretty sure the automobile companies in Detroit, in Michigan, in Germany thought they were their competitors. BMW thought Audi and Benz is his competitor. Toyota thought Nissan and maybe Ford is its competitor. They didn't know, all of them, that their competitor was a small battery maker in China called BYD. BYD. And today, Chinese electric vehicles are giving traditional automobile, internal combustion IC automobile makers a run for their money. You must iterate because your competition is coming from where you don't even know. CNN breaking news. Guess who their competition is? Who is the competitor for CNN breaking news? WhatsApp status. When Queen Elizabeth died, to find out if it's true, I just went to the different WhatsApp status of people and I started, rest in peace, rest in peace. I was like, oh, she's really dead. Who would have ever told CNN that WhatsApp is their competitor? You must iterate. Find what works and stick to it, but always disrupt yourself. This is how competence is established. And of course, you can go on and on and on and on. But just to ensure that I don't exhaust or exceed my time, I think at this point I will just wrap it up by saying one of the fastest ways that I have been
Excuse me,
able
sir.
to, yes, please.
Sir,
Did
I
someone
want
interrupt?
to ask. Yes, I'm the one, sir. She to Miriam.
Okay, you want to ask a question?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, please
Like,
Okay,
let
so
Mr. Olufukeji finish up,
can I
please.
complete my last thought? This last thought, then you can ask the question. I just want to say one last thing. So you can write the thoughts down and then we take it from there. Okay, so I was saying that one of the things that I'm currently doing to try and build competence is I am intentionally curating my circle. What do I mean by that? Again, I use a Bible reference. For Christians, Jesus spent all night praying for 12 people that will be in his circle to advance his work. So I'm like, if there's that level of intentionality, how am I actively building a circle of people that I can draw ideas, resources from, and also give to that circle? And like when you were in primary school and you would say, oh, I want this person to be my friend, or secondary school or university, and you actively go and make those friends, you need to audit your circle. And there are certain kinds of people you need in your circle. I call it the DTF model. This is why you see billionaires can execute so fast, because they have found a way to outsource the qualities, the competencies they don't have to people in their circle. And they build and do life together, both on a personal and on a corporate level. So I call it the DTF. The first D is dreamer. Dreamers. You need dreamers in your circle, except if you are the dreamer in your circle. You need people whose heads are always in the cloud, who come up with the most ridiculous of ideas. You need dreamers. You need dreamers. Now, a dreamer may say something that is childish, a dreamer may say something that is unrealistic, but when you keep interacting with a dreamer, they will inspire you to keep your own dreams going. This is why we watch Olympics. This is why the whole world watches Olympics, because we see people who dared to dream and can be a gold champion medal winner. Olympics doesn't solve any real life problems, but it solves the problem of inspiration through dreaming. All right, so dreamers. I call it the DTF framework. D for dreamers. Another D is doers. If you're a dreamer, you need to have doers around you. People who go beyond talk, beyond inspiration to implementation and execution. People who can cross T's and dot I's. Process people, doers. Because something about dreamers is you're always coming up with ideas, but you're never taking action. You need doers. You need talkers. Especially if you're introverted, you need to surround yourself with people who have mastered the art and science of communication and persuasion. You can read books like How to Win friends and influence people. And when I say you need them, you may not have them in your immediate circle. You can use the internet to create your circle based on people doing great stuff online that you touch base with. But it helps to have them in person. You need talkers. You also need thinkers. T for thinkers. Thinkers. You need people who know how to think, not worry, think. People who can sit down with a concept for hours and days and flesh it out. You need thinkers. We're a nation of people that don't think, that don't process long term. Over time, we're very surface, but you need thinkers. And we are changing that narrative by thinking. Then you also need fixers. Fixers. Fixers are people who get you out of a mess. People who, it's when I say you don't buy markets, troublemakers. Again, I use a Bible reference. Peter, every time they came for before they do anything, he's cutting somebody's ear off. He's fighting. He says, should we call fire down? What I mean is that you must have somebody in your life that is a fixer by nature. If possible, have him as your lawyer. People who can do the unpleasant work for you. You need flexers. F for flexers. People who teach you how to relax in a way that doesn't put you in trouble. People who know how to chop life. Because if you're someone who is constantly creating, constantly innovating, you need time to refresh, to rest, to relax. So you need people that can help you have a good time in a safe way. You need flexers. Then lastly, you need feelers. Relational people, people who can relate with people. There's some of us in a bid to build competence, we burn bridges. We put ourselves first so often that people around us don't like us. They may admire you, but they don't like you because you are too goal-oriented. You are too achievement conscious. And so you end up doing great stuff, but you lose relationships in the process. You need a feeler around you, somebody who can tone down your can-do spirit, your choleric nature. And this really helps because people who are achievers are the ones who change the world. But sometimes they break people in the process of changing the world. So you need feelers that can help you with your emotional intelligence, that can help you with your relational limitations. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope my session has empowered someone. And these are some of the frameworks you can use to build competence at a national level and at a corporate and even an individual level. So I think I can take questions now. Thank you so
Thank
much
you
for your
so
time,
much,
your
sir.
attention. Cheers.
Thank you so much, sir. It was such a pleasure listening to you. Me personally, I've listened to you a lot, and this was just very beautiful. Please, everyone should please mute themselves, okay? Thank you so much. Please let's give him a round of applause. Let's thank him in the comment section while I get the questions. So I think the first question I saw in the comments was, can they get your slides? Don't know if that would be possible. Over 4 people have asked
I
if
think
they
I could
could
get
get
that
you.
across to, I think I
All
could get
right,
that
thank you.
across to,
All right then. Then just before I call on Nishitu, um, there's a question in the comment section. Um, so this person is asking, oh, she said, so how can we do this to people that don't have friends? I don't know what exactly she's asking, because to call someone my friend, the person needs to be very significant in my life. So how do I go about it? I think you spoke about friendships and adding value. So she's saying she doesn't have friends. And because to call someone my friend, the person needs to be very significant in my life. So how do I go about it? I don't know if you understand her question.
I think I do. And I didn't exactly say they're your friends. I said connection. So the first thing is someone doesn't need to be your friend for you to be connected to them. You just need to understand what values you share and limit your interaction to those values. So you are not trying to make them your friends. You are just trying to ensure that both of you have mutual respect and access to each other. You show up for them when they need you to, in the capacity they need you to, and they show up for you when they need you and the resources you represent to them. So that's the first thing. The second thing is read this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. You can also start following pages that have to do with community building, that have to do with connections, emotional intelligence. But I know that if you are ever going to sustainably build a friendship, right, you have to, number one, be very self-aware. You have to be very aware of your strengths and your weaknesses. And then you have to be very consistent in terms of your behavior. And then, of course, you have to be ready for the sacrifice and expense that comes with relationships. For relationships to be sustained, resources must be exchanged. And then, of course, you also have to learn to add value to others without breaking yourself. Okay? So that's very, very important. And then it takes time. Rome was not built in a day, especially when you're trying to make connections in old age. People already have their friends, they already have their circles. And then, of course, there are social constructs that help you make friends. For example, your churches, for example, your PTA group or your children's school, or for example, your workplace recreational structures, your gym. All right. So you observe, you find out what you would like to do, the goal, the assignment, the project for the next phase of your life, and you also communicate it to people, and then you now hear how they respond, and you'll be like, oh, I'd like this person to be in my circle. And don't go there with a sense of entitlement or just to get. You must also know what you bring to the table so you don't end up feeling marginalized or feeling despised. I think this helps. I think this helps.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. I think if there are any other questions, we'll have to send it to Mr. Olufukeji personally. We'll
Yeah, I'd
send
like
it
to
to him.
answer one question by Chidima. People that are high achievers need feelers. Please explain
Okay.
this better. By feeler, I mean someone who feels, someone who understands and reads people's body language. So if you are a high achiever, chances are you have people around you that are inspired by your achievements, but they're not able to achieve like you because they don't go all out. They don't know how to press and push. Those people, have conversations with them. Take them out for lunch. Ask them about their worldview. Ask them about their relationships. Tell them to honestly tell you some of the things that they don't like about you. We do this thing in my office. Yesterday we did it on Friday, where we go out for lunch with my staff, and then it happens once a month. They tell you what they don't like about you. Of course, my organization is quite small in terms of staff strength. They tell you what they don't like about you, and then you work on it. And we do that in a casual environment. So find a way. When it's your birthday, ask people, tell me 2 things I should change. All right. What practical habits can we develop daily to improve our persuasion and influence skills? Okay, now we're going into, I'll now have to break everything down detailed, so we don't really have that time.
There's no
But this is what I
time.
say. Always use your words to compel people to take action. Always use your words to compel people to take action. All right. So that's basically it. Thank you so very much, Wisdom Falabi.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. A lot of people have questions for you. There are a lot of questions because you really dished out knowledge, a lot of value. But I'm thinking we would have a system around that because these questions are very important, very important. So we'd probably relay them to you and we'll just move on from there. Thank you so much, sir. Your time is much appreciated. Please let us give him clapping emojis, a
And my
round of
IG
applause.
handle. Let me put my IG handle.
All
Is
right.
Ejimi
Thank
the
you
profitable
so much
investor
for this.
and value
All
flow
right.
trading. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All
So
right then.
The Mavericks Leadership Center, raising iconoclastic leaders.